15 minutes, I'm going to go through nice and quick on body transformation. So I've been working in this industry for around 12 years, transforming people's body. And I want to go through 4 different subjects today on things such as getting started and the difficulties of getting started. So that might be, for example, someone who's overweight. Why don't they get started? What is the difficult part? All right. So I just want to discuss that. Not really a question. I want to give you some experiences. So, for example, I'll give you an example today. We had a call this morning with someone who is constantly, contemplating getting started and never really getting there. And because they're not getting there, they're in a situation in where they're just always putting it off, pushing it back. And I said to them, what was it that got you over the line? And they said to me, oh, well, it wasn't a situation where I was going to different places, inquiring of different places. But when you phoned me, you were serious about, booking a call, serious about getting me in for a session. And then I realized that, oh my God, this is actually reality. I'm actually having to go, because a lot of people, from my experience, end up in a situation where they keep, contemplating start date, or I'll start when I come back from a holiday. I'll start when I end up in a situation where I'm not busy. And these things, are problematic because you actually never start. So I want to go through different subjects like that. That'd be one subject. Another subject would be, I had another call with somebody about getting started, was that they were super busy in work, and their kids won't be leaving school in about 6 months. They're going to start after our conversation. They ended up starting, they ended up getting going, and they ended up in a situation where they were actually like, oh, hold on, like, I've started, I'm 2 months in when I contemplated not starting, and I'm 10 kilos down. I think they were like 8 to 10 kilos down in the first 2 months. And I think that is, a perfect example of someone putting too many things in front of them, thinking that they can't just do the basics. Because when you break it down, you only need to do like four times a week, 45 minutes, right? And when you break that down, you're talking that's like 3 hours, 3 hours of work a week, and you can't find 3 hours. Then it's a lot to do with a mindset thing. Let's ask Josh next. Josh, when you have found difficulties, when you call people sometimes and they've got those barriers of getting started, what do you find that those barriers are?
Very similar to what you talked about. It's mostly people who have a busy lifestyle, but that's the problem. We all are busy. We all are busy based on what we think matters, or what we think we want to prioritize in terms of our responsibilities. So a lot of the parents who I get in touch with would either say that they're busy trying to drop their kids to school, they're busy with work, they're working a 9-to-5 job, and they simply don't have time for themselves.
Yeah.
But just like what you said, it's a very good example. It's just, if you break it down in such a way where you allocate time, even if it's just 45 minutes of your time a single day, you can really, really get a lot of things done, and it compounds the whole entire week. And that's just that 3 hours.
Yeah, so think about it. It's 3 hours of the whole week, and that's like 45 minutes. In terms of nutrition, another thing is like, if you're again looking at nutrition, you've got access to like InstaShop now. You have access to, so many different factors of delivery. The only thing is about delivery is that when you go on these apps, they are designed to then catch your eye on stuff that you don't need. So keep that in mind, is that when you have Deliveroo, Talabat, Uber, I think you can actually order on that as well. They are designed to get you, right, to eat the things that you don't necessarily need. Whereas when you go into a supermarket, it's actually the same thing, just in person. So just be aware, when you're going into these places, you're going for one reason and you get the things that you need. And don't, because I go into supermarkets, and what's the thing I see? I see people walking around like, what should I get? When you're in that state, you're done for, because they've already got you, because you're going in and you're already going in emotionally. And they always say, don't shop on an empty stomach. That's absolutely fundamental. So go into these places with a list, knowing that what you're going to get, and once you find out what you should be eating, because a lot of the time, a lot of people don't know actually how to balance that. Once you don't know that, and you know the ingredients you want, then you focus on, those particular ingredients, and then get out again, as opposed to picking up stuff you don't need.
So would you advise someone to list down the things that they want to get, before they go to a
Yeah,
supermarket?
I mean, for me, I eat the same thing every day. So, like, I'm just pretty 6 days a week, I know what I'm getting. On a Saturday, sometimes I pick up different stuff, get some sausages or some sourdough bread. But during the week, I literally eat the same things. I honestly think the cashiers laugh at me because I go in with the same thing, I eat the thing, and I have to take it out, right? So, literally, best thing to do is go in for a list. If you're struggling and you don't know what to eat, find out what you should eat, take it with you, and then follow it. But honestly, it's a lot less than you realise. You don't need a load of stuff, especially a lot of people I look at in the supermarket and they're like looking around the aisles and they've got so much stuff, like looking and they've got a basket full of stuff, looking at random sauces and stuff they don't even necessarily need because they're going in with emotion. And that's not saying you can't eat sometimes with a variation, but at the same time, you need to understand that variation will cause you to fall away, especially when it comes to fat loss. So that's your training. You're training for about 3 hours a week when you break it down of 45-minute slots. You are getting your nutrition. You're going in there with your shopping list, what you should be eating, and you're in and out. And obviously, we can go through what you can eat, maybe a bit later. But that'd be that. And then obviously your movement per day would be another one. That's going to be a big factor. Next one that I wanted to touch base on was how to get away with eating, how to get away from eating on the go. And I actually think that's a really funny subject because I think a lot of people just grab stuff. Like I just had a call with a guy there. He's an online client. He actually came into the gym, even though he's going to be working with me online. He was saying things like, how do you get away from like eating on the go? So he said, this is what I ate for lunch. I had the Subway 6-inch, whatever, because I had my breakfast and I didn't have any access to food. And I told him not to eat. And his face dropped. He's like, what do you mean not eat? I'll be starving. And I said to him, the reason you'll be starving is because your breakfast wasn't the right breakfast, which means that you then moves on to the lunch, which you will be feeling hungry because you're not eating the right breakfast. So that's why knowledge and format and things like that really matter when it comes to making sure that you get the right sequence, because you need to get momentum to lose fat. To lose fat, you need to build momentum. And without momentum, without the knowledge, you can't really build momentum because you keep making the same mistakes over and over again. So my focus for him was get your breakfast correct. If it gets to lunch, you either make sure you're prepared, because I know that a lot of people take food to work. That's number one. If you're really struggling with that, then either just have a larger breakfast, big breakfast, with the protein that you should be having, and then at night time, same thing, larger portions. Nothing wrong with that. That's how I eat. That's how a lot of my clients eat. If you're someone who struggles to eat large portions, that's a different story. Then you might have to break it up a little bit different and have something for lunch in that case. But if you're, again, number one is you either prepare the meals. Number two is you don't prepare the meals, but you just don't eat anything. Or, you can eat out if you want, but at the same time, like, it's a lot harder to navigate that over the long run. You might be able to make the right decisions, in the short term, for a week or two. If you keep ordering out in the long term, you keep making those wrong decisions. So,
now, just adding to that, if there's anything where would you advise, is there any type of food outside that a client would have access to that you would advise them to have?
Yeah, there is some places on, like, again, Deliveroo and stuff like that. Being out and about, you are kind of a recipe for disaster because you are going to have to pick restaurants when you're locally. But again, obviously making the right choices. If you can make the right choices, going for the higher protein stuff, going for the stuff that's higher protein really is what you're going to go for. Having your fruit after you eat, because in a restaurant, again, it's designed to then make you pick stuff you don't necessarily need. And obviously, it's very palatable. Like, it's really, really tasty. So when you're going there every day in, day out, let's say you have a bad couple of days, if you're having a bad day, how many times do you make bad decisions on food? Pretty much most of the time. So the reason I don't make bad decisions with food is because I've got the same thing in the house. Even if I'm having a bad day, I'm eating the same thing because that's what I have access to. That's why having access to certain food is a nightmare. So if you are out and about, if you're going to make a decision on something, either if it keeps happening over and over, get a meal plan. So get an actual meal plan to then, take to work every day, which is fixed food. I don't really like meal plans because they're not really high quality food, but that's one option. Another option could be, yes, make the right choices with ordering from either Deliveroo or a restaurant if you're out and about, high protein. Or number three, which is the main one, is just actually prepare food and take it with you is probably your three main options. And one of the questions I want for Josh, and obviously we are focused on fat loss a lot of the time, but in general is moving correctly. And why this is important is because it's going to give you more freedom to do more exercises, so you get a bit more variability, so it's variable. And also at the same time, you don't get injured. But really the question is, the topic is, what have you found is key to, performance and kind of movement? What have you found that's the biggest problem for people when they start in terms of movement? And where do you think that a lot of people need to focus on the most when it comes to actually fixing the issue that they have?
I think we should go back to just being able to see how well somebody moves, because if you can see that there are restrictions or limitations that set someone to move, let alone squat, and they know that it's a hindrance for them, people will create this barrier that, oh man, I won't be able to go down, or they would lack the confidence to be able to push themselves hard. And even if they do over a long period of time, they're just setting themselves up for disaster, because they don't train the right movement patterns correctly. And most of the time, even in my experience, I do see that when you just keep loading up with heavy weights, just thinking that you can bypass, not moving the right way, you're just going to end up getting injured.
Like the girl this morning, she came in. She has an injury from previous, and she was loading up the weights. She was like, "Okay, I won't squat so low, but I'll go weights." I was like, "No, actually, take the weights off, get deep into the squat, see how it feels." And she was like, "Actually, that feels okay." It was more of a conscious thing you were mentioning, right? It's like because you're scared, you don't want to move. But when she actually moved, she went in position. She was absolutely fine. She was like, "Wow, I'm fine." And then I said, "Okay, from this position, okay, after the next few weeks, we'll slowly build up the weight from the right position, rather than just not getting in the right position, overloading the body, and actually never using the right muscles."
Exactly. And just adding to that, it's when people do this for a long period of time, they're just setting themselves up for disaster, because they injure themselves, and when they do, they have long setbacks of just not
Which then makes it worse for your fat loss, because then again you lose confidence because you're not training, and when you lose confidence you're not training, then it messes up your food. You need to have all three in sequence. You have your training, your nutrition, and your lifestyle, which is like your daily movement, all in place to get fat loss. As opposed to if you're just, you can still lose fat without the daily movement, to be honest, if your nutrition is right on point, but it just makes it a little bit harder. So that the bare minimum would be your nutrition, your training, and your lifestyle on point. Next one would be the last one we have is staying motivated. How do you stay motivated? My saying is always, even before, I've heard a lot of people since I used to think this, say this now. I'm not saying I was the original, but my point is that I was never motivated to train. I always say to people, when my heart rate's 180 beats per minute, it's not comfortable. I don't look forward to it. I don't enjoy it. So I don't base my training and lifestyle around motivation. I base it around a necessity. I base it around my goal. My goal is to be getting older, as we all will, and being in prime condition as long as possible, moving, as Josh has mentioned before, in the correct patterns, being as lean as I can, being strong as I can, being as fast as I can, explosive as I can throughout that time. And that's my motivation, because a lot of people say, well, how do you stay motivated all the time? Because what's your goal? I'm like, my goal is to, what I just explained. Whereas most people's goal is to lose fat. And when they start losing fat, the funny thing is, the hardest part of your journey is once you've lost the fat, you don't get the great gratification every week of losing weight. Losing weight is awesome because you're getting gratified all the time. You're like, oh, this is awesome. I'm losing weight. But as soon as you get in a situation where you've hit the target, you have like that kind of downer. It's like when people sell their business, like someone sells their business for $15 million, $20 million, right? They get this kind of like high, and then they just kind of, I'm bored now. It's because I'm not getting gratified anymore, because it's actually the journey that's the fun part. So it's the same principle with fat loss. If you're making so much progress and all of a sudden you're hitting that goal and then you're left empty, it's because you're not actually understanding why you're doing it. And the next part would be, okay, you've lost the fat, reestablish your goal, which doesn't always have to be a really quick fix goal. It might be a longer term goal. You need to keep yourself on that track, because that's a lot harder than it is dropping fat on a weekly basis. I don't know if you agree with that. So.
Yeah, I completely agree. And just having your biggest why, like how we always ask people, finding your why of why you want to achieve a certain goal. And Because again, motivation will only take you to a certain extent, but when you lose that, what's going to keep you going?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I think that's it. Motivation, don't think of it like that. Like, obviously, you'll have more periods of time where you are more motivated, of course, same as me. I'll be motivated for certain points, and I'll be not as motivated for other points. But the main thing is to understand that you have to have something to work towards. And even if that goal, and I had a call the other day with this specific subject on one of the open office calls we have with all the clients online, was that sometimes you need to just look at a month and go, okay, I'm busy for 3 weeks this month. What is the minimum that I can achieve? That is also a goal. Just because your not goal is to lose fat, your target could be, I just need to make sure I get 4 sessions in a week, and I get my protein levels on a daily basis to 130 grams of protein a day. That's it. That's my only goal. And then that's your target for that month. Because what you'll find is you might end up even making progress in fat loss on that month. Plus, you get through the busy time. And then the next month, you have the option with less on. You then are able to drop even faster. But if you do the mistake that most people make, is with, oh, I'm busy, and then they drop in terms of their quality, and their fat goes back up again. You get to the next month, you're demotivated, and you're even further behind, as opposed to being the same weight or a little bit less and motivated. And when you're motivated, you're more likely to drop even more. So things happen, as I always say, with momentum. Like, momentum is your key. If you need to build momentum in different stuff, and to build momentum, you can't keep this stopping and starting attitude. Because when you do that, when you start again, you end up in a situation where you have to, get the fire burning again. And that's, the more you do that and keep over and over again, the harder the journey becomes. I have calls with people on a regular basis when they say things like, this is the 7th time I've tried this. This is the 8th time I've tried fat loss. You're not learning the foundation correct. You need to learn the foundation correctly, which will then take you on, a better journey. And then you don't have to worry about fat loss anymore, because there's so many different levels of health. Lose the fat, move to the next stage, as opposed to constantly being in this fat loss journey and it being so difficult. Because when people are overweight, there's a couple mindset issues they have. So that's something that needs to be fixed. And once that's fixed, then you don't have to go back to that old person you were before. One thing I'll tell you from this, to give you something from what I'm saying, is that you are what you tell yourself. So keep that in mind. I had a conversation with a woman this morning. She's like, I'm like this. So I am this kind of person, and I am this. And I used to make this mistake. I'd talk about who I was before, and I would talk about it a lot and reiterate like who I am. And actually, I was just reiterating the negatives of who I was, what I was doing wrong before, which then also kept me the same person. Whereas when you're trying to fix those things, stop telling yourself who you were and start telling yourself who you want to be and who you are now. Start talking like, oh, this is what I'm like. If you're someone who's never on time, start saying, I'm always on time. If I'm someone if you're someone who binge eats all the time, say, no, I've got discipline. I don't binge eat anymore. And you tell yourself that over and over again, you will actually become that. And listen, it might sound a bit like, cheesy for some people, that kind of mindset, but I promise you it works. It really, really works. And I used to make that mistake over and over again. Stop telling yourself you're someone who you were before, and start telling yourself who you are, who you want to be now. And that will really make your journey a lot easier, and that will stop you sabotaging your own progress. That's it. That's all good. So guys, thanks for watching. I hope that was helpful. And this is the first episode we've done, and I'll keep them going, trying on a weekly basis. So you guys will keep me accountable. So if you have any questions, please comment on the video. I'd really appreciate that. Subscribe if you're on YouTube. And thanks again. Thanks, Josh. Cheers, bro.